This is Ace, this is Jean, this is Peter, and this is Paul.
Oh, I love a good religious group.
By the summer of 1976, Kiss were no longer simply a rising rock band. They were becoming something else, something larger, a commercial machine, a cultural phenomenon, a brand. But empires are rarely built without costs. Behind the grease paint, behind the explosions, behind the million-dollar smiles, the strain was beginning to show. This is the story of the second half of 1976, 5 months that would push Kiss to the edge of exhaustion, test friendships, ignite rivalries, and set the blueprint for both their dominance and their future fractures. Before we step into August, we need to understand the air Kiss were breathing. Destroyer, released earlier that year, had changed everything. Producer Bob Ezrin had forced the band to grow up in the studio. Orchestrations, choirs, dramatic arrangements. It was no longer just raw New York street rock. And yet, not everybody in the band loved it. Ace Frehley thought parts of it were overproduced. Peter Criss leaned towards the emotional, theatrical direction, especially with Beth. Gene Simmons saw possibility everywhere: branding, expansion, domination. And Paul Stanley? Paul saw the future, and he intended to outrun it. Meanwhile, Casablanca Records founder Neil Bogart was betting the entire label on Kiss. Financially, Casablanca was stretched thin. If Kiss faltered, the company might collapse. Manager Bill Aucoin knew it. So did tour choreographer and confidant Sean Delaney, who increasingly became the emotional interpreter between the band and management. There was no slowing down now. There couldn't be. By August, the makeup was already iconic. But it wasn't static. Kiss understood visual evolution instinctively, even before marketing departments studied such things. On August 8th, Peter Criss subtly altered his Catman design by adding blue accents around the eyes. It seems minor, but it wasn't. Makeup wasn't decoration, it was identity. Each member guarded his persona fiercely. Ace was the spaceman, aloof, unpredictable. Gene was the demon, calculating, theatrical, myth-building. Paul was the star child, sensual, charismatic, the ultimate frontman. And Peter was the Catman, earthy, emotional, the one fans often saw as most human. The blue sharpened the gaze, made the cat look colder, more mysterious. Some interpreted it as Peter asserting control, quietly reminding everyone that Kiss was not just Gene and Paul's band alone. Behind the scenes, tensions about songwriting credits and musical direction were already simmering. Peter wanted respect as a vocalist and musician, and increasingly, he wasn't sure he was getting it. The Atlanta heat hung heavy on the afternoon of August 14th, 1976. Thousands gathered for an in-store appearance at Peach's Records, part publicity, part charity, the Kiss Off benefit. By 1976 standards, this was chaos. Fans screamed, glass rattled, security strained. Kiss sat behind a table like painted royalty, signing endlessly. Gene thrived on it. Every handshake was a conversion. Paul turned charm into electricity. Ace oscillated between amused and detached. Peter smiled, but fatigue lived behind the eyes. Because the schedule never stopped. Tour, fly, promo, record, repeat. Bill Aucoin watched carefully. He knew the band had crossed a threshold. They could no longer appear casually anywhere. Every appearance was now a controlled event. Sean Delaney moved through the crowd like a field general, calming nerves, directing movement, ensuring the mythology stayed intact. And Neil Bogart? He saw numbers. Every screaming teenager meant another record sold, another t-shirt, another lunchbox. Yes, lunchboxes were coming.
Bill Aucoin always saw the bigger picture. He could tell that we connected with our fans in a way that far exceeded the norm. He grasped the extent to which people would respond to us beyond the music. He understood the potential of merchandising. When I first saw the tour program Bill created for the later stages of the Alive tour, I had never seen anything like it. Bill also thought, and was quickly proved correct, that our fans would want t-shirts and belt buckles. And that was just the tip of the iceberg.
Merchandising was exploding. Soon, there would be dolls, posters, belt buckles, Halloween costumes, trading cards, and comic-style artwork. Kiss weren't just musicians anymore. They were becoming America's loudest cartoon. And that was exactly the plan.
The first burst of fame coincided with the first wave of Kiss merchandise. I had always seen the band as a means to an end. In my mind, making music was only part of the plan. The master plan was to create a cultural institution that was as iconic as Disney. From the very beginning, we were at the forefront of rock and roll merchandising. We had the usual products like t-shirts and posters, but we also had an interest in expanding into other markets. We grew to the point that Bill Aucoin actually bought a share in a company called Boutwell, and we wound up in manufacturing. Warehouses in the Southern California Valley were manufacturing our own t-shirts, belt buckles, and stuff. Mail order forms were enclosed inside the records. We did things other bands wouldn't have had the balls to do. The same things you see when you buy Time magazine. There's an order form inside. From the start, we didn't care that it invalidated what we did. We were not concerned with credibility. It just looked like a lot of fun.
That's one thing we did that the Beatles didn't do. I think we're maybe the first band ever to do that. Probably, I think we are, to do that. I don't compare us to the Beatles, because I love the Beatles. I mean, they're my favorite band. But we are a phenomenon, and we're the only group that, like the Beatles, sold lunch boxes and radios and buttons and buckles and all that stuff, and no other band's done that, and we had the largest show that's ever been put out, and we do cause insanity and kids go crazy, and I haven't seen that since the Beatles.
Bill wanted to maximize our potential on all fronts. We certainly weren't going to be marketed like Led Zeppelin. And we had more to offer than just music. We were naturals for merchandising, even if we didn't realize it ourselves at first. Back then, the breadth of Kiss merchandise was often scoffed at. But I looked to the Beatles. You could get Beatles dolls and shirts after they made it big, so what was wrong with it? Obviously, nobody wanted Deep Purple dolls, but why would they? Without disrespecting their music, a lot of the bands of the day had a fairly nondescript, forgettable look. But Kiss had visual appeal. That was the nature of Kiss, the beauty of Kiss, so I understood the desire to market us that way, and I never thought it detracted from the band. I just wanted to be sure there was substance. In this respect, Gene and I had some differences. If someone came to us and said, let's make a Kiss cake, Gene would say, let's make it 10 feet high with lights all over it. I would say, that's great, but what will the cake be like? How will it taste? That other stuff is cool, but we need to have a great cake underneath. Without that, we have nothing. Sizzle was great, but you needed the steak. That remained my concern as the merchandising took off. Sometimes I wondered how far would be too far. Were there things we shouldn't do? But at that point, the answer was no. It all seemed good, phenomenal even. Kiss radios, Kiss motorcycles, Kiss lunchboxes. As the money started to flow from Bill's merchandising concept, as well as continued sales of Alive, I have to say I was impressed. It was exhilarating to hear about money going into our personal accounts. We still drew a fairly modest weekly salary and didn't take physical possession of the rest of the money, but we were told about it.
Kiss has gone on to do astonishing things. I'm amazed by it. We have 2,000 licensing and merchandising successes. We are the juggernaut of that world. Kiss is a new comic book. We have Kiss condoms, Kiss Visa cards, Kiss caskets. That's right, that one last trip, right in there. You can climb into your Kiss casket and go in style, baby. I'm gonna get you before you go and after. Or you can put on your Kiss condom. You know, you have a choice. It's all about choices. You can either put on a guy that looks like a Roman soldier from Spartacus, or you can put on my face on your Johnson. Those are the choices you have in life.
It's funny, VH1 asked me, what did you think of the merchandise? And I said, I didn't really care. It's nice to make some money. It's great to sell merch. I felt when we were putting out the merch, the little dolls and the little sleeping bags and the lunch boxes, that was very cool. But always it was the music. It was always the message in the music of what we were giving the fans. This is what, Strutter, whatever, Dress to Kill. All this stuff was, tough, man. We were like selling the music. Yeah. We weren't selling Barbie dolls. Yeah, we were selling caskets and Trojans. We were selling rock and roll.
Yeah. While the public saw superheroes, the private lives of Kiss were growing complicated. Paul Stanley drifted through relationships, wary of anything that might anchor him. The stage was his true intimacy. Gene Simmons approached romance strategically, fascinated by conquest, by mythology, by the idea of the rock star as a modern god. Ace preferred low-key companionship, though alcohol increasingly became a constant partner. Peter sought emotional grounding, someone who saw the man beneath the whiskers. The constant touring and grueling work schedule was already putting a strain on Peter's marriage. But the road corrodes stability. Hotels blur together. Nights stretch long. Temptation is everywhere. And loneliness even louder than the amplifiers.
I do. I do miss the days where everything is, there's a goal. There's a goal to reach, and it's fun getting there. I miss, having them over for dinner, and the days where you struggle a little, and you say to yourself, well, you're doing it because something good's going to come out of it. Mm-hmm. And there were the very early days where people would just look at them like they were off the wall, with the makeup and stuff, and my family especially, yes. Plus I was working at the time. I had to go and explain this to the people I worked with too, so but it was all good because of the way it all ended. They did make a success.
It's Sunday evening in New York, and I have Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley from KISS here now. First of all, thank you for working on a Sunday afternoon.
As long as it's needed, we are here.
And Gene. It's called the Day Off Blues. Okay, well, look, we appreciate the chance to get an interview because there's so many people in Australia that are very interested in the band record sales.
Is it true the girls are big in Australia?
No, girls are big in America, I think. In Australia, they're beautiful. That was heavy, wasn't it?
Well, no, I'll go.
That's funny, but no. Since we've been over here, we've seen a lot of girls that are big, like large girls. Maybe it's McDonald's.
Why are you holding your hands
McDonald's.
up?
It's McDonald's.
That's right. Blame it on the bossa nova.
Okay, well, look, 2 and a bit years you've been at it, and 5 albums, and now you're sort of pulling in audiences and breaking records all over the world.
I broke the record yesterday.
Did you?
Threw it on the floor.
Right?
Yeah.
It hasn't been easy for you. No, it went over. We'll just cut that out. No. It hasn't been easy for you, obviously, and there's had to be the bad times as well as the good. So can we quickly sort of just go back to those early days?
Yeah.
How did the band get together?
Well, Gene and I were playing together. We've been playing together for about, now it's got to be, about 6 years, 5, 6 years. Keeps getting longer, and I hate it, because
It can't be that long.
it has, because we were working in the studio around my 18th birthday, which was 20. No, yes.
So you've been involved in a lot of obviously session work and things like that prior to the band getting together.
Yeah.
Now, is it an interesting story how the whole 4 of you got together?
Well, it's really not that interesting. It's really not. We could make a big to do about it. What happened was Gene and I were playing together, and we wanted to go in a certain direction. We wanted to put together a band that would really put on a phenomenal stage show. We were influenced by, your English bands, The Who, people who were really dynamic. After that, Gene and I fired the band we were working with, or split, or whichever way you want to put it. And Peter had an ad in Rolling Stone, the magazine, drummer seeks band, will do anything, desperate for fame. And Peter joined us, and that was the 3 of us. Then we rehearsed for a couple of months and starved and lived in a little room on 23rd Street. And then Ace walked in. Ace walked in after we auditioned about 30 or 40 guitar players, and banged into the wall a couple of times, fell, and played the guitar, and he was in the band. And from then it was just a lot of hard work, starving.
Right. How did you stumble across the name KISS?
Well, there was a pebble on the road, and as we were walking, we stumbled, and lo and behold, it said KISS. No,
Well, that's a good title for a rock and roll band.
If you,
Stumble.
No, pebble.
Oh, pebble in the foot.
Rock and roll.
we were going to call it Don't You Stop.
No, actually, we were right. There were 3 of us. At the time, it was a trio. That was when Peter, what's your name again? Oh, Paul and myself were in a car, and we were riding to get, I think we were going to Paul's house, and we were going to stop off at a hamburger joint. It's Wetson's. That's what it's
like
called.
McDonald's.
Right.
And in the car, by that time, we'd already started playing the new material and thinking about, where we wanted to go and what kind of concept it was going to be. And I think we were half kidding or something, but I said, why don't we call the band that 4-letter word that is a substitute for loving? Exactly. And everybody kind of laughed and said, Paul, as it was going. And then it was Paul that said, well, that's close, but how about KISS? And that's when we threw him out of the car. So we started playing folk rock, and ever since we've been happy bluegrass musicians.
Yeah, just like the choir. Weren't you called some sort of a choir then?
Well, we actually
The
had...
Brooklyn Boys Choir?
No, they were the
actually a Brooklyn Boys Choir. Brooklyn Boys Choir. And
they're stealing your hubcap.
Planet of the Apes. And they did the chorale, or whatever you want to call it. They did the chorale on Great Expectations. We got them on probation just so they could do that.
The strange thing is that these kids, Brooklyn is a very kind of quaint place. There are about 3 million people living in it, and it's just a part of New York. There are 5 different parts, counties they're called. Boroughs, actually, they're boroughs. And these kids come from Brooklyn, where everybody talks like this. Now everybody's getting ready to do their session. And right before their parts came, they're talking like that, and all of a sudden they become very angelic. You've got great, and they switch to that magically. That was interesting. Oh, it's good.
Cut that out too.
It's working.
It's working, by God.
No, I tell you, I'm quite concerned because this year I'm Gene.
I'm watching your.
That's a good name for a band, though.
Your VU meter here. It says the microphone is working.
All right. Okay.
Deja vu.
Keep your eye on it. All right. The stage routine of the band is something that's not compared to by any other band in the world. It's a routine that's really extraordinary.
Yeah.
So, whose idea was that to combine this theatrical performance on stage with obviously the musical talents that you have?
I think if anybody really lets their imagination go wild and can really loosen up, Gene's looking at me like, tell me about it. If you can really loosen up and let yourself go wild, you can come up with probably something very similar to what we did. We did it first. It's kind of like a rock and roll Disneyland.
Mickey Mouse. Now look, you must have had this idea that you weren't going to go onto the streets until you had this act together, until you had the right music, the right stage act, and the right makeup,
And the right bank. And the right arm.
the right bank manager. So there's been a lot of foresight going into that. Do you attribute that to the rapid
Forsyth, you
Yeah, I know John Forsyth.
I didn't want to say it.
But we were afraid of saying it because we didn't know if our father knows best, or what is it? My uncle, the father, or
Father
something?
knows best.
No, that wasn't it. My uncle, the father, Uncle Bentley, that's what it was.
Life with Bachelor Father.
Bachelor father. Okay, so we've given Gene Forsyth his plug. Yeah, we got that.
How is John?
He's fine.
Okay.
Hi, Gene. Hygienically speaking.
Yes.
Right, Firehouse would be appropriate enough to depict some of those wild actions?
Yeah.
That's where we swim on stage. In Firehouse, we threw water at the audience.
No. In the beginning, we didn't even plan it that way. We just wrote songs that were very visual in concept. So you had Firehouse and Waterhole. Niagara Falls. Yeah, we had songs that just
Saturday Night in Albuquerque.
That's right.
Yeah, right. The stage act, right?
Yes.
The stage act that we've heard so much about in Australia.
It's not
doesn't
true.
exist, but we haven't been. Right? Can you describe? I don't want you to describe the stage.
Well, it's kind of so and so. No, there are 4 guys in the band. That's the first thing. The new stage act is going to be possibly the biggest thing that's ever appeared on stage. We have, to give you an idea of what goes on stage, as a preface, we have seven semi trucks. Those are 18-wheel. They're 18 U-Haul. No, they're much bigger than that. They have 18 wheels. I don't know if you have them. When we went to England and we saw the trucks, they were much smaller. Go get out of here. Belt is the biggest thing.
The guy who's going to make this is going to go bananas. Because he's got to try and splice it all together.
Oh, we will.
You're going to tell us about the stage.
Well, right now we're in a transitory state. How's that? I've never used that word. Now we're going to be doing the new show, which is based on Destroyer, whereas the show that really made us what we are now is the show that Alive was based on. So the Alive show had a levitating drum platform, bombs going off on stage, Gene spit fire,
Now, didn't something go wrong there and your hair caught on fire at one stage?
Yeah, matter of fact, it was the first show we did in New York City. We were 4th on a bill with Iggy and Blue Oyster Cult headlining, and that was the first time it caught, and then it caught again, about 4 months later, and then since then, it's been about 5 times. I used to have a real, much bigger, much longer hair length, but the worst thing you can do, obviously, when your hair is on fire is to move around a lot, because then it really spreads.
How did you put it out?
You have people that care about the next show. They rescue you from certain doom.
Yeah, hasn't it put you off at all? Like, I wouldn't like to make a hair caught on fire and then go out and face it again.
You know, people do many different things every day that you wouldn't.
Surprised with some guys will do for attention.
Yeah, really, that's really about it. I wouldn't normally do it. I mean, I don't breathe fire when I'm in the party or something.
Here I go again, you know, in Sweden. Can we talk about Rock and Roll All Night as a song? No.
Yes.
All right, now hang on, I'll rephrase that. Songwriting of the band, you've come up with a lot of material, so who writes the songs? I write the songs.
We all do. We all write material. Barry Manilow, that's correct. I write the song.
I write the song.
That make Kiss sing. We all write the tunes. Usually the one that writes it sings it, and if not, then, you know, the material, if it doesn't really fit the one who sings it, it gets switched around. But usually the one that writes it sings it, and, you know.
Okay, so there's an obvious reason for the success of the band in such a short time, and that is that there's talent prior to any of the stage acts or the outlandish...
The thing you have to realize is before the visual stuff goes into it, you have to write songs. You have to sit in your room with a musical instrument,
and they got to be good, huh?
Yeah, we've never been a band that said, let's write a song where we can bring elephants on stage. You know, you write the song, and if you can do something with it visually, fine. If you can't, it's, you know.
Most of the tunes that we do on stage are straight ahead tunes that nothing really happens in. But certain, tunes like Firehouse and Detroit Rock City, things that are obviously lend themselves to very visual things, just can't be sung. I mean, you want to give somebody something to get off on visually.
That new song, Cow Dung.
Cow Dung?
Yeah.
Really?
The whole audience.
Sounds a bit shit-house? No.
You're going to keep this in, are you?
No, we'll cut that out.
That's good.
Okay.
What we tried to do with Destroyer was... we had such tremendous, success with Alive that there was a lot of people who figured, well, they can only have that kind of success with a live album. Anything they do in the studio is, just going to be trash. So we went in and tried to do something a little bit more musical and diverse than the albums before it. And that's basically Destroyer. The next album will be closer to the first.
On August 20th, the air trembled with anticipation as former Turtles band members Flo and Eddie stepped forward to introduce Kiss at Annaheim Stadium. It was theatre before theatre. The crowd didn't merely cheer, it surged.
And now, are you ready? I said, are you ready? All right, Peter Criss, Ace Frehley, Paul Stanley, Gene Simmons,
When Kiss hit the stage, they weren't opening for rock. They were redefining what rock spectacle looked like. Fire, blood, smoke, levitation, explosions. But beneath that spectacle was something less glamorous. Exhaustion. The schedule had become punishing. Flights at dawn, sound checks, interviews, performances, after parties, early departures. Bill or coin drove them relentlessly, not out of cruelty, but survival instinct. Casablanca needed hits. Kiss needed dominance. Rest could wait.
If it hadn't happened to us, we wouldn't have believed it. This was early 1976, only 2 years after we released our first record. And there we were playing stadiums before anyone other than the Beatles had. Bands that had been around for almost a decade, including Ted Nugent and Bob Seger, were opening for us. We knew something was going on. It was clear.
If Paul was the voice of Kiss, Gene was the architect of its immortality. On August 21st, during a Cream magazine photo shoot, Gene leaned fully into the demon mythology. Tongue extended, eyes feral, posture predatory. Cream loved irreverence. Gene supplied it effortlessly. He understood something fundamental. Fame is not given, it is engineered. The shoot reinforced Gene as the band's most recognizable face, a fact that sometimes irritated Paul, who believed the music and performance should define them.
Gene sure used the word I a lot. Whenever I tried to answer questions about the band, I naturally answered using we. But when Gene answered similar questions, he always cast it as I.
Their partnership was powerful, but competitive. Always competitive. Sean Delaney often sensed it before anyone spoke it aloud. 2 generals, 1 army.
Gene Simmons. Well, there's a one of a kind. Gene was really the driving force behind KISS, keeping at it day and night ever since I met him back in '73. One of the things Gene had a problem with, though, was doing interviews for KISS. He always sounded like a school teacher to us, and all of us kind of got after him over and over again. He's a rock star. He had to talk like a rock star. Well, he really couldn't ever get that through his head in the earlier days, so Paul, Peter, and Ace kind of ganged up on him and said, look, if you're going to talk like a school teacher, we're then going to do the interview. So you can make a few sounds and grunts and groans, and every once in a while say something short, Gene. Remember? Short, Gene. But we're going to be the rock and rollers, and we'll talk for you. So ever since that moment in time, Gene has always been pretty much the quiet one, certainly in rock and roll interviews.
Then absurdity and panic. On August 29th, the Stage Cats, mechanical props integral to Peter's drum riser, were stolen. In another band, this might have been minor. Not in KISS. Every prop mattered. Every illusion was sacred. Without the cats, the show lost part of its magic. All coins scrambled. Replacements were commissioned. Security tightened, and the incident reinforced a sobering truth. KISS had grown so large that even their equipment had black market appeal. They were no longer climbing the mountain. They were visible from miles away.
No, I remember the cats, though, being stolen in Brave Stadium. Somebody out of nowhere came in with a truck, threw them in their truck, and drove them away, and they were gone.
Man.
True story, yeah.
People will lift anything, I swear.
If Destroyer had been theatrical, Rock and Roll Over would be a response. A correction. The band wanted grit again. On September 28th, producer Eddie Kramer, legendary for his work with Hendrix and Zeppelin and also KISS's Alive album, was brought in to capture something raw, something alive. Recording took place at the Star Theatre in Nanuet, New York, which had been converted into a studio to preserve live acoustics. From the start, the mood was different. Less orchestration, more muscle.
Then came the idea of going back to Eddie Kramer because Alive had been so good. We rented the Star Theater in Nanuet, New York, outside the city, but close enough that we could all go home at night. Eddie came on board, and we retreated to familiar territory as fast as we could. Even though Eddie was from South Africa, he had the air of an English gentleman. He was part of the heritage we all loved. One thing we hoped Eddie could fix was our drum sound. After all, he'd been part of getting that big drum sound Zeppelin had. He had Peter set up in the theater itself while we played in a studio elsewhere in the building. We linked Peter in by video camera.
We decided not to do it in a recording studio. We actually rented out a theater, the Nanuet Theater in the Round, which at the time wasn't very far from where I was living. I just gotten married to Jeanette, and I was 30 minutes or less from the studio. And what we did was we set up on this round stage, and Eddie Kramer built a control room in one of the offices, and we had snakes going down to the drums and amps. And it was a very different record But it was a lot of fun to do because, we experimented with different types of recording techniques. And that's one of the things I loved about Eddie.
Eddie didn't function as a musical director or visionary in terms of arrangements the way Bob had, and we missed that leadership. No one was there to help us write or shape songs. I was having trouble coming up with songs, so I asked Sean Delaney to come over to my apartment for writing sessions. Those informal get-togethers at my 52nd Street place yielded Makin' Love, Mr. Speed, and Take Me for Rock and Roll Over, as well as All American Man, which showed up on Alive 2 the following year.
Paul Stanley drove sessions hard, chasing perfection in performance rather than layering. Gene balanced commercial instinct with heaviness. Ace contributed riffs that felt dangerous again. Peter's drumming regained punch, though tensions about creative input lingered beneath the surface. The sessions were intense, but efficient, because they had to be. Tour dates loomed, promo obligations stacked. There was no luxury of artistic wandering, just results. What made Rock and Roll Over feel so immediate, so urgent, was that it wasn't chasing perfection. It was chasing impact. Gone were the orchestral layers and studio experiments that defined Destroyer. In their place, amplifiers pushed hard, drums sounded like they were echoing off concrete walls, and a band felt like it had something to prove. Because they did. This was Kiss reminding the world, and maybe reminding themselves, who they were at their core. The album doesn't just ease in, it kicks the door open. I Want You begins with one of the most iconic riffs Paul Stanley ever wrote. A grinding, stop-start figure inspired in part by the swagger of British hard rock. You can hear shades of bands like Led Zeppelin in its weight and space, but stripped of mysticism and driven by pure physical urgency. Paul constructed the song around tension, the way the riff pulls back, then slams forward, mirroring the lyrical obsession. In the studio, producer Eddie Kramer captured it with minimal overdubs, letting the band breathe as a unit. The gang-style backing vocals gave it a communal, almost tribal energy, less theatrical than Destroyer, but more primal. This wasn't about seduction, it was about demand. If I Want You is control, Take Me is surrender, but on Paul's terms. Written quickly, almost instinctively, the song channels the spirit of 60s garage rock, filtered through arena-sized aggression. There's a looseness here, a sense that the band is chasing the feeling rather than precision. Kramer leaned into that looseness. The guitars bleed into each other, the drums push slightly ahead of the beat, and Paul's vocal feels just on the edge of losing control. Influences from raw American rock and roll are clear, but amplified to 1976 levels of volume and urgency. Lyrically, it's direct to the point of confrontation, another Paul Stanley hallmark. There's no metaphor, just want. Gene Simmons arrives with calculation. Calling Dr. Love is built on a deceptively simple riff, repetitive, almost hypnotic, influenced by groove-based rock and even elements of early funk structure, though filtered through Gene's heavier, more sinister sensibility. Gene has often cited inspiration from Three Dog Night's The Show Must Go On, particularly in the phrasing of the chorus. But where that song is theatrical, Gene's version is clinical, cold, commanding, and slightly unhinged. In the studio, Kramer emphasized separation, letting Gene's bass and rhythm guitar sit in a thick, almost suffocating pocket, while the drums hit with deliberate weight. The backing vocals, including contributions shaped by Sean Delaney, turned the chorus into a chant. This wasn't a love song, it was a diagnosis. Sleazy, strutting, confident to the point of arrogance, Ladies' Room leans heavily into the influence of glam rock. You can hear echoes of the Rolling Stones in its loose, swaggering groove, but filtered through Gene's darker, more exaggerated persona. The composition is deceptively simple, built around a bluesy framework that gives Gene space to play with phrasing. Lyrically, it's observational, drawn from real tour experiences, but heightened into caricature. Kramer kept the recording raw, minimal polish, prominent bass, and a drum sound that feels almost live. The gold wasn't refinement, it was atmosphere, sticky floors, dim lights, bad decisions. Peter Criss finally takes the wheel with Baby Driver, reflecting Peter's roots. R&B, soul and classic rock and roll with a groove that swings more than anything else on the album. It's less about heaviness and more about feel. Co-written with Stan Penridge, the song draws from early material Peter had developed before Kiss reached global fame. You can hear the difference immediately. The rhythm breathes differently. The vocal phrasing is more elastic. In the studio, Kramer allowed Peter's drums to sit front and center, giving the track its rolling momentum. The rest of the band follows rather than leads, a subtle but important shift in dynamic. For a moment, the Catman isn't just part of Kiss, he's steering it. Gene returns, colder this time. Love 'Em and Leave 'Em is built on a driving, almost mechanical riff, reflecting Gene's fascination with control and detachment. The structure is tight, efficient, no wasted movement. Influences from British hard rock again surface, but stripped of ornamentation. The rhythm section locks into a relentless, forward motion, while Gene's vocal remains deliberately restrained, almost indifferent. Kramer's production highlights that restraint. There's space in the mix, but it feels intentional, like something being held back. Emotionally, this is Gene at his most distant. Connection reduced to transaction. Mr. Speed is one of Paul Stanley's most underrated compositions, a song that feels playful on the surface but is meticulously constructed underneath. The riff is lighter, almost bouncy, drawing influence from power pop and classic rock structures. You can hear a nod to bands like The Who in the rhythmic phrasing and vocal layering. Paul stacks harmonies carefully here, showing the lingering influence of Destroyer's more produced approach, but without losing the raw edge Kramer was aiming for. Lyrically, it's Paul in full persona, the confident lover, the performer who never slows down. Speed isn't just motion, it's identity. See You in Your Dreams. Gene revisits a song originally recorded for Destroyer, but this version is different. Where the earlier recording leaned into the theatrical, this one strips things down and roughens the edges. The tempo is slightly adjusted, the guitar's more aggressive, the vocal more immediate. The composition itself reflects Gene's love of pop structure. Catchy, direct, memorable, but recontextualized within the harder sound of Rock and Roll Over. Kramer's approach here is about contrast, taking something polished and making it feel dangerous. It's familiar, but sharper. And then, a shift. Hard Luck Woman is Paul Stanley stepping into storytelling heavily inspired by Rod Stewart's raspy, emotional delivery style. Originally written with Stewart in mind, the song found its true voice in Peter Criss. And that changed everything. Acoustic guitars replace distortion. The arrangement breathes. The emotion feels grounded, human. Kramer recorded it with restraint. No excess, no spectacle, allowing Peter's vocal to carry the weight. It's imperfect in the best way, fragile, sincere.
Hard Luck Woman was an anomaly because I never intended it for Kiss. I didn't see songwriting as an exercise, and normally I was good at self-editing. If I didn't think a song had a place on a Kiss album, I didn't bother to finish it. But I was still fascinated by trying to figure out what made certain songs by other people tick. I've been listening to Rod Stewart's Maggie May and You Wear It Well with that in mind and decided to try my hand at something similar. The lyrical spark came from someplace completely different, a song called Brandy by Looking Glass that was about a sailor's daughter who worked at a bar. Once I finished the song, I couldn't imagine Kiss doing it. I planned to try to get it to Rod to see whether he wanted to record it. But with Beth doing so well that fall, Eddie Kramer and Gene both thought the song would make a logical follow-up for Kiss. And since Peter had that type of raspy voice like Rod's, we figured he should sing it. I had to record a vocal for Peter to follow, and again, he took many takes to provide enough material to cobble together a finished version.
Following the success of Beth, this track reinforced something crucial. Kiss could connect without fire, and that terrified them a little. The album closes the way it began, with force. Making Love is built on a relentless riff co-written by Paul Stanley and Sean Delaney, combining urgency with precision. There's a sense of forward motion that never lets up, a final push rather than a resolution. Influences from high-energy rock are clear, but the execution is pure Kiss, tight, aggressive, and built for the stage. Kramer captured it with minimal interference, letting the band sound like a band again. No orchestration, no theatrics, just volume and drive and hunger. Track by track, Rock and Roll Over isn't just an album. It's a reaction to pressure, to expectation, to exhaustion. It's Kiss reclaiming their identity in real time. 4 individuals pulling in slightly different directions, yet still locked together by momentum. You can hear the cracks forming, but you can also hear why they couldn't stop. Because this sound, this raw, urgent, unpolished sound, it was working. On October 19th, during the Winter Scene photo shoot, Kiss leaned into stark contrasts. Black leather against pale surroundings. Almost mythic. By now, photography wasn't documentation, it was strategy. Every image fed posters, magazines, merchandise pipelines. The band members were becoming symbols as much as people. Sometimes they felt it too, especially when makeup stayed on longer than faces beneath it seemed to exist.
It's the Paul Lynde Halloween Special, starring Paul Lynde. With Paul.
Television changed everything. And when Kiss appeared on the Paul Lynde Halloween Special, they stepped directly into American living rooms. Not concert halls, living rooms.
We were invited to do the Paul Lynde Halloween Special, which meant national television exposure. We appeared on the show with Margaret Hamilton, the original witch from The Wizard of Oz. We also noticed that the world had changed. All of a sudden, you could walk down the street, and people would be walking by wearing Kiss t-shirts. We had arrived.
How about a little chamber music?
A little chamber music? Well, that would be nice, but where are the musicians?
Locked up in a little chamber. But I can summon them. Oh, they make such very soothing, quiet dinner music. You'll love them. We call them Kiss.
Oh, not unless you brush your fangs.
Okay, boys, play something a little peaceful for Mr. Lynde.
Performing Detroit Rock City, Beth, and King of the Nighttime World, they introduced suburban families to something theatrical and strange and unforgettable. Peter singing Beth softened perceptions. Suddenly Kiss weren't just loud monsters. They had heart. But the appearance sparked debate inside the band. Was this too mainstream? Too comedic? Gene saw expansion. Paul saw exposure. Ace shrugged. TV was TV. Peter saw validation, especially as Beth quietly gathered momentum.
Come on, Margaret, I've always wanted to meet Kiss. Hi, fellas. Yeah, just what I've always wanted. 4 kisses on the first date.
Margaret, your friend sure has a weird sense of humor.
does your mother know what you're doing? Margaret, you haven't introduced me to your friends.
Oh, forgive me. This is Ace, this is Jean, this is Peter, and this is Paul.
Oh, I love a good religious group.
I can take one look at you four, and I can tell you how you got your name and how you got your act. You had a fight, and your mother's told you to kiss and make up. And your makeup is something else. How long does it take you to put it on?
We don't wear makeup.
Why don't you push the down button on your elevator shoes? You know, I have to ask you a favor. Do you think you can find it yourself to go me one more wish?
You've been so very good so far, I'll have to say no.
Oh, rats.
Rats! Anyone who's a friend of rats is a friend of mine. What's your wish?
Atta girl. I wish Kiss would do one more song for us.
Immediately, if not sooner.
Gene Simmons.
We're in the studio right now with Rodney Bingenheimer.
These guys are walking encyclopedias on rock and pop.
That's right.
They know everything.
The mayor and his subjects sitting right here before your eyes.
Right,
Listen, right
trick or treat.
before we go any further, I'd like to make a presentation to you.
Oh,
The presentation is your official new name.
What's that?
Your DJ handle. Everybody needs a handle.
Right.
It should be Rodney the Killer Bee.
Killer Bee.
The Killer Bee, mayor of Sunset Strip.
Right, and that was Gene Simmons from Kiss.
That was Rodney. Oh, it was great.
Well, we just how many saw the Paul Lynde show, which was really great.
I saw it.
How'd you like doing that?
It was really fun. Hard work. We were there like 20 hours a day. But it was really fun. Rodney, why are you wearing makeup?
How come you're not?
It's Halloween. Who wears makeup on Halloween?
Really? So
what's this thing?
Ask a few questions.
Sure.
Are you gonna be doing any more TV besides you did the Paul Lynde?
We're filming a rock concert. We're doing that in about 3 weeks, and that should be on. Well, I think we go to Japan, so that's like January, February, somewhere around that. And around then, what's that? We'll be doing another television show. Yeah, rock concert.
Great.
It'll be like a major segment.
Can't wait for that. Is that gonna be done here in LA or New York?
We're gonna film that in Boston.
Boston.
Yeah.
Great.
Do you get one drama out here? No, I don't think you do.
Yeah. No, do we?
Yeah. You do? There you go. Why not?
Any plans for a movie or anything? You guys can do a movie?
We've been offered a couple of movies, but right now we're trying to concentrate more on moving. We're in the process of moving. Yeah, playing rock and roll.
All right. You have a new album coming out, don't you?
Yeah. Rock and roll over.
Can you tell us something about it?
Heavy metal, hard rock and roll. No screaming children, no violins.
Great.
No orchestras. 10 songs. 10 songs. It's legal speed, kids.
Right.
You know what's great? People downstairs in the lobby are fantastic.
Really? A lot of people down there?
Talk about makeup, yeah. Their makeup is just out of this world.
Can I ask you a personal question, speaking of makeup?
Well, we're not like that. We're straight.
Is there ever going to be a day in the history of rock and roll where you guys will perform without makeup on stage?
It's possible, but right now, who knows? Right now, Kiss is doing what Kiss wants to do right now. What we're doing 2-3 years, who knows? It's really, what have we changed to, however we progress is what we'll turn into. We're not the same now that we were 3 years ago.
Right.
Rodney, are you ever going to become the Senator of Sunset Strip?
Senator of Sunset Strip.
You like that
title? Yeah. And you guys are, good looking without the makeup. And a lot of girls out there are going crazy.
You're not bad looking either, Rodney.
Oh, gee.
Mutual Admiration Society right here, huh?
How'd you get the idea for the makeup, and where and when did you get that together?
We were born with it, actually. We don't wear makeup. Some people die with their boots on. We were born with it. You like that?
Yeah.
You like that one? Listen to this one. No, actually, we were always fans of the big English bands, and we always loved show, big spectacle. We always hated bands that got up on stage and gave us their backs and played to their amplifiers. We always wanted to throw eggs.
You guys sure show it, don't you?
Yeah, we wanted to be a flash band. All the best bands were mainly English bands, and we just didn't want to be another Grateful Dead. We'd rather be
definitely not.
Yeah, Happy Live.
Happy
Live. Yes, I know.
Right. So when is the album going to come out officially?
It should be out next week.
Next week.
Should be in the stores. Go down and get it, kids. Some people already are playing it. Isn't that right, Kenny? Are you playing it?
At home.
He's playing at home.
I heard one cut, the one that Paul does. No, not Paul. Peter does.
Tell him where you
Okay,
heard it.
tell us about that.
Where'd you hear that?
Where do I heard that cut?
You heard the whole album.
Well, yeah, I heard the whole album, and guess where I heard it?
Where'd you hear it?
Paul, we took a couple of girls from a new group called Backstage Pass. We went behind, get ready for this, boys and girls, a strip joint called 77 Sunset Strip.
I kept my eyes closed. I didn't see a thing.
And a parking lot where Paul had a cassette, and he played me the entire album, and it was totally rock and roll. There's even a cut on there that sounds a lot like Rod Stewart, Maggie May.
Yeah, that's the next single. That's Beth Goes to College. It's called Hard Luck Woman.
It's amazing. It was very well.
Great.
Eddie Kramer did the whole album, right?
Yeah, Eddie did a lot of Zeppelin, and he did Humble Pie. So that's the good thing about this is we're really getting back to heavy metal. Anglo.
Rodney, when are you going to start your own band, huh? The Rodney Bingenheimer Sunset Blues Band.
Right. Rodney and the Rockets.
No, there is a Rocket. There was a Rocket in...
Rodney and the Killer Bees.
There were two Rockets, one from Denmark and there's one in Detroit.
You know all rock and roll. You know everything.
Canaveral is
Well, it's the same Rocket.
Let's hear some music.
John the Danger.
Let's do this. Let's take some phone. We'll give out the numbers, then we'll play some music. We're going to take a few calls here at 578-1068. And we ask you to make the questions really short because we got a lot of people want to talk. We got someone on the line right now. Hello?
Hello, who's this? This is John.
Hi, this is Brad.
Hello, Brad.
How you doing?
Are you in the Brat?
No.
No, you're just Brad.
Yeah.
Brad, not Brad from the Brat.
No.
Oh.
Okay, I'd like to ask you, I like the ideas you're putting on the show, too. I think that's really, really great. And, there are very few flash groups in the 60s, but I think the one person like Jimi Hendrix was really out of sight.
He was great.
And I want to know how you felt about him, how you felt he handled his stage show, and like his clothes. He wore clothes which were interesting to see instead of
He was fantastic. When he was alive, he was fantastic. When he cared about his audience, he was magnificent. It's too bad the whole band wasn't as energetic as Hendrix, you know. He was great. What can you say? But, everybody's got their time, and we have our own heroes now. It's our turn now.
Okay, I was just wondering if he was one of the people who stood out in your mind from that time.
You betcha. He's great. Was great.
Thanks a lot.
Yep. Pick it up. You're on Rock Radio, 1,000,000 watts of power coming at you from both ears. This is Rodney the Killer Bee.
Yeah, I'd like to talk to Gene.
Well, you've got him.
Yeah, Gene?
Yeah?
I wonder why your other two buddies aren't there with you tonight.
Actually, we're separated by a couple of thousand miles of distance. Ace is in Honolulu, and Peter is in the Bahamas someplace. And this is really supposed to be our vacation, but we couldn't think of a better place to spend it than coming here to LA and, visit people we don't normally get a chance to see. What's your name?
Bob.
Mott?
Bob.
Oh, Bob.
Yeah.
Not Bob the Hoople.
Yeah.
How you doing, Bob?
All right.
Can you say Bob backwards?
Bob.
Bob, that's good.
Yeah, practice.
Where are you now?
Bellflower, California.
How long have you been playing bass?
I haven't played
Why do you wear makeup? What does it mean?
What?
I don't know. What kind of stuff do you like?
What?
What kind of stuff do you like?
Well,
Marshall McLuhanism,
I'm kind of into guitar right now, but not...
What kind of guitar? Fender, Gibson? What?
No, not quite that good.
Well, all you need is 6 strings, Some of the best records were made on real cheap guitar. You know what? We've got to go. I just got a message from the higher ups. Some guy was 10 feet tall. We've got to get going. Okay?
All right.
Take care, Bob.
Later on.
Bye.
Gene Simmons, Peter Criss, Paul Stanley, Ace Frehley, Kiss. Rock and roll over. Kiss, rock and roll over. Casablanca records and tapes. Kiss, rock and roll over. Don't miss the spectacular new Kiss show. The smoke, the flames, the exploding sound and fury of Kiss.
On November the 11th, Rock and Roll Over, Kiss's 5th studio album, hit shelves. The response was immediate. Fans embraced the heavier direction. Critics noted the return to rawness, and the cover, designed by Michael Dorrit, exploded with comic book vibrancy, perfectly aligning with the band's expanding merchandising universe.
So I was working for an agency called Howard Marks Advertising, and Kiss was their client. So I agreed to the meeting. I went and I met with the members of the group and the Dennis Wallach, who was the creative director. And of course, I'm interested in doing something, that's going to be challenging, but I didn't really know what they wanted, and so, or what their thing was with the makeup and all that, these characters. So, I quizzed them all about that while I was there, and I just kind of decided that the cover was going to be just creating these icons for these avatars for each of them, kind of depicting what they were or what the characters were about, and that was the beginning of how I did this. And then the whole idea of the name Rock and Roll Over, I thought maybe I'll just design this as kind of a mandala, something that just would, you could see it almost animating and turning. So that's why it really has, like as on the T-shirt, it was, there really is no top or bottom, because it just, it could exist in any four of those positions. So that was where the idea came from. It was really very simplistic idea.
And speaking of merchandising, it was now everywhere. Kiss Army kits, board games, colouring books, jewellery, thermoses. Children who were too young for concerts still knew the faces. Neil Bogart understood what few executives fully grasped at the time. Kiss weren't just selling music, they were selling belonging. Meanwhile, the Originals box set repackaged the first three albums, converting new fans into completists overnight. Commercial genius, relentless monetization. But success has gravity. It pulls harder the faster you rise. Preparing their next tour felt almost militaristic, and on November 15th, Kiss began dress rehearsals for the Rock and Roll Over tour at Camp Curtis Guild, Reading, Massachusetts. Precision mattered. Explosions had cues. Blood had timing. Lighting had choreography. Sean Delaney pushed performance discipline, shaping how Paul moved, where Gene stalked, when Ace stepped forward. This was no longer chaos. It was controlled spectacle. Yet fatigue crept deeper into bones. Arguments flared quicker. Small irritations grew teeth. They were together constantly. But connection was thinning. Television again demanded perfection. Multiple takes, camera blocking, lip-sync precision. For a band built on volume and movement, the constraints were maddening. Ace hated repetition. Peter grew impatient. Paul demanded professionalism. Gene treated it like another battlefield for dominance. And on November 21st, Kiss shot promotional videos for Love 'Em Leave 'Em, Hard Luck Woman, and I Want You, to be broadcasted the following year for the Don Kirshner's rock concert. Bill Aucoin mediated. Always mediating. On November 24th, during the performance at the Civic Center in Savannah, Georgia, Peter Criss stepped forward to sing Beth live for the first time. Something shifted. The arena went quiet. Lighters rose. For a moment, the fire-breathing juggernaut became intimate. And Peter, often overshadowed, stood alone in the spotlight. The crowd responded with tenderness rarely associated with Kiss. Inside the band, reactions were complex. Paul respected the emotional power. Gene recognized the commercial gold. Ace approved, as long as the guitars came roaring back afterwards. But for Peter, it was vindication, proof that vulnerability could coexist with spectacle. Then came the jolt. Literally. On December 12th, during a performance, Ace touched an ungrounded metal railing and was electrocuted. For seconds that felt eternal. The spaceman hung there, trapped in current. When he fell back onto the stage and resumed playing, the audience thought it was part of the act. But it wasn't. Backstage, the scare lingered. Rock theatrics had always flirted with danger, but now the risk felt real. Mortality briefly pierced the mythology. By year's end, Kiss had barely stopped moving. The schedule bordered on inhuman. Relationships strained, sleep shortened, substances crept closer. Yet outwardly, the band looked invincible. Bill or coin saw both truths. The band was conquering the world and quietly eroding at the edges. Sean Delaney tried to preserve morale, reminding them why they began. Neil Bogart pushed forward because momentum was survival. 1976 did not simply elevate Kiss, it transformed them into an institution. But institutions demand sacrifice, time, privacy, sometimes friendship. As the calendar turned towards 1977, the makeup still gleamed, the crowds still roared, the merchandise still flew off the shelves. Yet beneath the armour, 4 men were growing older, more tired, more aware of the cost of becoming legends. The question was no longer whether Kiss would rule rock. The question was, what would be left of them when they did? Hello, it's just me, Rob. Just want to say thanks so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. That's the end of 1976. I've already started work on 1977 Part 1. 1977 might even be a 3-parter. I'm not sure yet. It depends how it kind of pans out. But it's definitely going to be at least a 2-parter. Really enjoying making these videos. They are hard work. They are not AI. They're all me. But I'm really enjoying it, and I love the fact that so many of you are also enjoying them. But don't forget, if you are enjoying them, then you can help support this channel. Hit the like button, the subscribe, the alarm, all that other stuff. I don't need to tell you how YouTube works. You know how it all works. But yeah, it's been a hard one, this one, because I've had so much work the last month, which meant this has gone out 2 weeks later than I wanted it to. And in the meantime, I've tried to put some other Kiss videos out, so there's always something going out on a Friday. And also, I've got a new computer, which, although it's slowed things down initially, should hopefully speed up the process moving forward. But either way, I don't know why I'm boring you with that. You've watched the main chunk of this video, and I really appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Thanks very much. Catch you later, Bill and Ted.